first session of the 2020 community conference. Let me share with you real quick here. Maybe. Wants to load. There we go. I just want to thank all of our lovely event sponsors. We've got Multicare, Molina, MC Delivery, and Tacoma Public Utilities. So thank you for their support here on our lovely conference. And we've got three speakers for you today on neighborhood improvement projects. We've got community gardens, the Tacoma Tree Foundation, and Little Libraries. And if you do need closed captioning, you'll see in the top left of your screen, there's a big red button that says live. You can click on that and view stream on Otter Live Notes, and it will transcribe it for you as well. And with that, I think that's, if everybody is good to go, we will go ahead and get started. Our first workshop, we have got Kristen McIver with Harvest Pierce County. She's the Urban Agriculture and Local Access Program Director.
Thank you. Hi, welcome, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. If it's okay, and I do have a presentation, so I'm going to share my screen here real quick. Okay, is that working? Can everyone see that? Okay, see a few nods. All right. So I'm gonna, so as was said, I'm Kristen. I'm with Harvest Pierce County. We're the program that supports community gardens throughout Pierce County. I'm just gonna talk a little bit about like what they are, how our program works, and how they can work to support communities. I will warn folks though, like my microphone on this laptop sometimes freaks out. And so for some reason I'm not transmitting. Alicia and Eric, I can see you on my screen. So if one of you would just wave at me, I can usually fix it pretty quick if I know. So just, sometimes I start sounding like a cyborg. So just get started here. So what are community gardens? There's a really wide diversity of how they look in our county. We have a couple definitions that we use. One of them is just up top here, any piece of land gardened by a group of people. That's actually the definition used by the American Community Gardening Association, which is a national group that supports community gardens. Another definition I like to use that really I think gets at kind of the heart of how we support them here in Pierce County is community managed open space. And so both of these are really describing the who of what the space looks like. It's not, they don't say it's a garden that grows food or it's a garden that grows flowers or anything like that. It's really about them being a project of the community and being something that is public and more than one household coming together. Community managed open space is different than like a park. A park is managed typically by a park district or a park department. If you drop some litter there, someone's going to come and clean it up, likely for you. But when you are involved in a community garden, you're really managing it as a community. And that's one of Harvest Pierce County's roles, is to really support the community to figure out what they want, what's the vision, what they want to create, so that they can create something and then manage it for themselves. So what do we find there? They really are as diverse as the different neighborhoods of Tacoma and Pierce County, which if any of you have lived here for any period of time, you know there's an incredible diversity. Many of them do, focus on vegetable gardening. So there's organic vegetables, there's flowers, there's fruit, gathering spaces for people to come and just sit and enjoy a beautiful space. Children's areas, some of them are focused on kids or are at school. Some of them just have a little kids area on the side for where kids can kind of be attended to while parents are gardening. There's a range there. Some of them are set up as demonstration gardens, places to educate, formally or informally. Composting is also something that typically happens. Some of them carve out space for wildlife or native plants. There are several orchards and food forests that we support, rain gardens, really anything that you want to create in your neighborhood, you can put into a community garden. Just a little history. This country has had several different waves of community gardening, which, surprise, surprise, often coincide with downturns in the economy. So really the first big wave was in around the 1890s as urbanization was really taking off in this country, and larger numbers of people were moving away from the farms and in the country into cities. And there was a lot of concern that kids would stop knowing where their food came from back in the 1890s. And so that's when the school garden movement really first started. There was another big wave during the Great Depression as there was a high unemployment and high poverty. And so they were considered an antidote for idleness. I guess idleness is what you have when you don't have productive work, and also a great source of food. Many of you are probably familiar with the Victory Garden movement that happened during World War II, where many backyard gardeners were encouraged to grow food for themselves and for their communities, as much of our food was being sent to the war effort. There was another big movement in the 1970s around, the beginning of the first Earth Day and the first kind of environmental movement nationally. Community gardens were kind of seen as a way for urban folks to get back to the land and get more connected in with their food. And on to today. Some of the gardens we have here in Tacoma date back to the 1970s. There's at least a couple that are 40 plus years old. There was sort of a dip in activity in the 80s and 90s, and then the current movement that we have really took off in the mid 2000s, and Harvest Pierce County just celebrated our 10th birthday. And so for the last 10 years, there's been a lot of activity and a lot of movement. This is what it looks like today. That picture is not super clear, but the little pink dots are community gardens. Pierce County is a very funny shaped county to try and fit on one slide. So there's several that are off to the east and to the south that don't quite fit on the map. But there are 83 gardens currently. There are a real range in terms of like who owns them and who manages them and how they are supported and who they engage. I think we have 51 different landowners that we work with in order to support these gardens. Harvest Pierce County is pretty hands-on in the gardens that are owned by public agencies. And then there's a whole bunch of private agencies like churches or nonprofits that manage gardens as well. And we do our best to support those as well in different ways. So just want to talk a little bit about like what I see as kind of the big deal behind community gardens. For folks who haven't been involved in one, you might think, oh, it's kind of cute. You get a couple extra free tomatoes this time of year. A nice hobby for people. But I really think that they're doing something important in cities that is more than about just providing tomatoes in the summer. And that they're really about this idea of reconnection. Connecting to our environment as city dwellers, or at least more urban dwellers. Actually, a lot of our gardens are in more rural parts of the county. I mean, we have one in Eatonville, have one on Fox Island, but still like connecting to our environment as, regardless of whether you live in the city or a more rural space, a lot of us are disconnected from the environment. A reconnection to our food supply, and a reconnection to each other. And I'm gonna just briefly touch on each of these things. But yeah, we have some problems today. I mean, this is just a short list of the problems we have in cities today. This presentation was mostly developed before we had pandemic and other things like that. But, I think everyone knows that to some degree, all of our cities have a degraded environment within the city. There's waste, and a lot of city dwellers don't fully integrate with the natural environment. Cities are pretty isolated, and it's possible to completely exist and not really understand the natural systems around you. You don't have to look far to see that a lot of people have an unhealthy relationship with food. And a lot of us have really fewer opportunities to engage in citizenship than we might. And so I think all of you here in Safe Streets, you're involved in your neighborhoods, you're doing things to try and make your community better. So that last one might not apply to you as much, but certainly a lot of folks just don't feel connected to their community. One of the ways in which urban areas are kind of disconnected from a healthy environment is in our soil. And so urban soil has often been damaged and or neglected. It doesn't infiltrate well. When the rains come, they take all the pollution that's in our urban areas and wash it into the sound, which creates problems. It doesn't have a good health for growing things. So even those who are trying to take good care of it and grow food often don't have good luck. And a lot of urban folks, for many of us, we're several generations removed from being on the farm. And so we don't really understand urban soil that well. But one of the other problems about cities is that we generate a lot of waste. We generate biosolids, we generate food scraps, we generate yard waste. All of that organic waste can also be turned into a solution that helps urban soil. And so one of the great things about urban gardens is like tapping into some of these waste streams to take what is a waste problem and turn it into a healthy soil program. And so we do a lot of that with our community gardens. We have partnerships with the Tegro program and with the county's compost program. We partner with the city's landfill to get wood chips that would have gone into the landfill when people bring in their trees to get composted. They separate them and grind them into wood chips. And in just last year, actually, I think these numbers are from 2018, but still, a lot of that organic matter gets diverted and sent into community gardens to both grow a lot of food, improve a lot of that urban soil, and then at the same time, improve the soil and the way that it infiltrates water so that we can clean the water better as a city when it rains, which improves the quality of life in Puget Sound. And so, people sometimes talk about rain gardens and other ways that this is happening, where we're trying to make our cities healthier so that the rain doesn't carry the pollution so much and that the sound can be healthier. And community gardens aren't often thought about one of those things, but it's very true that with all the community gardens that we currently have in Pierce County, 5.3 million additional gallons of stormwater are treated by all those acres, making a healthier environment for everybody. Another problem that I mentioned that we have is just a lack of connection to healthy food. Many people, kids and adults, don't know where food comes from, don't know who grew it, don't know when it's in season, and don't know how to grow it for ourselves. It used to be that this photo in the bottom left was like what all markets looked like. If you went to the market, you bought food in its whole form. But over the years, throughout modernization, which it has brought with it a lot of benefits as well, but there's been some costs. And so, now a lot of our food comes in plastic bags and aluminum cans and things that make it really easy to be able to feed yourself without really understanding the connection to where that food came from. And not to say that good health isn't possible with that, but it certainly helps if you have a relationship with the food itself. And we have some problems in our community because of this. And so here's I think 2018 map that shows the levels of obesity in the country. The darker the color, the higher the obesity rate. I don't have it at the top of my fingers, but there's certainly a lot of the costs associated with our healthcare are associated with obesity, and it's certainly not something that anybody wants in their life. So to have more access to healthy foods can work towards a solution for this as well. In addition to that, we also, I'm sure many of you are aware, have a lot of food insecurity in our communities. What does it mean to be food insecure? It means that you have a hard time accessing food, whether it's because of cost or just like access. It's too far away or there's limited transit. And a lot of our communities in Pierce County, as well as a lot of other places in the country, are considered food deserts, places where they just have limited access to affordable and nutritious food. there's a greater recognition today that food desert is not really the best term for this, because a desert is actually a natural thing that occurs in different places in the world, and it's supposed to be that way. But when this happens in our country, it's usually a result of different choices and different policies that have been made to make some communities have more food access than others. And so there's a movement to really refer to the areas that don't have good food access as victims of food apartheid. And so, like, you know, there are a lot of communities in Pierce County and elsewhere that a grocery store looks like what you see in the pictures there. Not everyone has access to a full-on produce section at a Safeway or something like that. But good things can come from having a reconnection to food on both of those problems, both the obesity side and the food insecurity side, because they're often linked. So you can, when there are gardens in the neighborhood and folks have an opportunity to grow some of their own food, there's increased access, increased affordability. The cheapest way to get vegetables is to grow them yourself. Increased interest. It's one of the easiest way to get kids to eat vegetables is to involve them in the growing, but it works for adults too. And just, there's also a sense of increased ownership. Like, many of us, unless we're artists or some other kind of producer, many of us don't get to feel like we've produced something in our life. We are consumers, and we're, you know, we consume information and we consume goods, but we don't really contribute in the sense of production. But growing a garden and having something to show for your efforts and being able to share it with family and friends is also a really beautiful relationship to be able to have with food. And gardens can help build this reconnection to healthy food. And I've talked with lots of folks over the years that I've done this about, like, how fun it is to, like, see what food looks like when you actually, like, get it coming out of the ground. Like, onions have a green top that you don't usually see if you just buy them in the store. And so there's a lot of learning and a lot of fun that comes through this process. It's also can have a tremendous impact on hunger. If you do some back of the envelope calculations about all the gardens, that if you add them all together, all 83, and do some rough calculations around how much food output comes out of those and the value of that food, we grow about over 1 million pounds of food annually, which represents over or just shy of $3 million. And that's annually, all the food that's grown and consumed or shared or donated. The community gardens have a system of donating within them, many of them, that contribute to donation efforts. We also manage what we call the Pierce County Gleaning Project, that harvests food from fruit trees or farms that would go to waste. And those donation efforts have totaled over 500,000 pounds of organic food to food banks over the years. So there's a large, it might not feel like a lot when it's just one little person and one little plot, but you add up all the thousands of folks that are doing it across the city, and it's a big impact. And then the one I want to talk about most here is that another problem in our society today is that people feel disconnected from each other. You know, a lot of us live in urban areas, but as you all know, we're incredibly divided. Our ability to work together is low. Not all of us know our neighbors. You probably are a subset of folks who know folks more than others, because you're all here because you're involved in your neighborhoods and in your safe streets groups, which is a great way to get out and kind of meet the folks nearby. But there's certainly a lot of folks who still don't have that kind of experience. And loneliness has recently been kind of flagged by public health experts as being an incredible problem here in this country, and it has a greater impact on our health than smoking. And that was pre-pandemic, you know, before that was when we were all still able to, like, move about and be together if we wanted to. And so loneliness is a really big problem. There's also, people don't often have the opportunity to participate in the creation of something that in like a civic way. You know, there's things that, like, you know, people might participate in their civic processes by voting. I hope you all vote. Or by, you know, there's something being proposed to the neighborhood and you might show up, like, either in favor or against it, but that's different. And those are important processes, but that's a different process than like taking a blank piece of paper and working together to create something together with your neighbors, people who you may not have known prior to this. And so community gardens are part of that kind of ladder type of work. So rather than just like, you know, pick box A or box B or say yes or no, you're really having a creative process and getting to collaborate with neighbors. And so our model for community gardens in Pierce County is really to try and emphasize that part, to create the community managed open spaces that I mentioned. And so we try and hold the space for communities to come together and think about what they want and what they want to achieve and what their goals are for their community, and then figure out kind of how to get there. Not all gardens are alike. There's a big difference between a garden that has every square inch divided into an individual plot that's rented out to an individual. You don't necessarily have to talk to each other that much. You just go do your own thing and go home. There's a lot of benefit to that. For the gardens that have a lot of different languages present, or just the purpose of it is much more about food security and a larger space to grow as much food as possible for folks who need it. But there's not as many opportunities to bump into each other and build those relationships, which is also a benefit of community gardens. And so you may be familiar with this term social capital. It's like when communities come together and have things like trust and other resources that they can rely on for getting through their what they need. And gardens can be shown to have higher levels of those when there's opportunities for people to connect to each other. Last year in Harvest Pierce County, we engaged over 7,000 people, either through a workshop or a garden or something. So that's people who came out of their house and met neighbors and worked together, got some physical exercise, got more access to food. So I think community gardens really do have a bigger impact than just the food involved, and it's this reconnection to our environment and to our food supply and to each other. So how do you do that? Like, how do we do that in Pierce County? It's pretty simple. There's two parts. There's the community part, which is like 90, or I think I usually say 80% of the work. And then there's the garden part, which involves land and sun and water and that sort of stuff. So the way we work with the groups in Pierce County is to really support a group of neighbors to come together and make their own rules for how they want to do it, talk to them about what's their vision, and help walk them through answers to the different questions that we pose around what's leadership going to look like, how you're going to communicate, what maintenance is going to look like. We have a separate process for landowners to make sure that they are clear about what they're getting into, and some important questions get asked. Land access doesn't yet seem to be the hardest issue in our community. There's still some options for land. We're not as densely packed as some communities like Seattle or San Francisco or places like that. And you know, Harvest Pierce County's role is to try and facilitate that relationship between landowners and gardeners so that everyone can be comfortable in a relationship together. And then we work to support gardens to get built by providing some of the physical resources. So we have relationships, like I said, with Tagro and the county's compost product, wood chips and cardboard for smothering weeds. These are all things that we can help provide to the gardens to help them get the physical structure built. But I think most of the work that we provide is in that social support of helping folks like learn to be in relationship with each other and work together towards their goals. We also do a bunch of education. We partner with the WSU Master Gardeners, but we also provide some education ourselves, as well as hire some other local experts to teach on topics we're not experts in. And then it's really also our job to just help support communities to figure out what's best. And some of that means, you know, people run into problems we haven't yet encountered. And so it's kind of troubleshooting together. Also helping provide conflict resolution if that is important. And An often neglected and forgotten thing that's super important is that celebration of all that's accomplished. It's been hard to have big celebratory events here in 2020, but we look forward to getting back to that when things are a little safer. So just my last slide here. In summary, community gardens are a lot more than just the fresh tomatoes, although those are also very nice. They really are an integral part of a city and an opportunity to reconnect with our environment, our food, and each other, with a lot of positive consequences that kind of ripple out from the site itself. So I know I was trying to cram a lot in there. I didn't leave much time for questions, but I'm happy to take any if you want to give the time, although I also know another speaker needs to go. But here is my email and phone number if you want to reach out and ask any more questions or want to try starting a garden in your neighborhood or just want to know more about how the program works.
Awesome, Kristen. Thank you very much. It looks like we did just have a question in the chat. What is the best way for people to find community gardens that might already be established in their neighborhood?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, harvestpiercecounty.org, there's a link there to where it talks about our community garden program, and you can click on find a community garden and it opens up to a map. And it shows all the gardens that are open to the public. And if you click join a community garden, it will open up into a form that you can fill out and pick your top 3 or 4 choices. And then I can reply and connect you with the garden coordinators at those gardens. Each garden is managed by a group of local volunteers. And so we're happy to connect you with those folks. The rules are slightly different. The costs are slightly different for each garden, kind of depending on the landowner and the situation. But I'm also happy to talk through on the phone, like what you're looking for and help you get connected to the right spot.
All right, well, thank you very much, Kristen. Up next, we do have Tacoma Tree Foundation. We've got Sarah Lowe is going to be presenting. She's an ISA certified arborist and the executive director of Tacoma Tree Foundation. With that, I will turn it over to you, Sarah.
Great, thank you. I will share my screen. Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, I'm Sarah Lowe with Tacoma Tree Foundation. Wanted to share a little bit today about what we do, how we work in the community of Tacoma and the greater Tacoma area to build a greener, healthier, and more connected city. I'm going to talk a little bit about programs and resources that are available to community members related mostly to trees, and then some frequently asked questions about trees and greening. I won't get into too much detail, but I'll just kind of put a few things out there, and you can follow up with us anytime. And ideas about how to get more involved in tree planting and greening. So Tacoma Tree Foundation is a relatively young organization in Tacoma. Our mission is to educate, empower, and support community members in neighborhood-based greening. And mostly the way that we do that is through trees and things like trees. We kind of keep it open mostly because we know that not everybody can participate in trees at their home. And we want to make sure that everything that we do is done in a way that is as inclusive as possible. So we kind of keep the door open to shrubs and fruit trees and houseplants even. And one thing I wanted to share too is that there are a number of organizations or agencies that are working in the world of trees. And part of what we try to do is co-create projects with our partners. Just a couple examples that we went to Fawcett Elementary at the beginning of this year. Oh, sorry, not Fawcett. This is a picture of Roosevelt, but we have a few schools that we've worked with where we've kind of worked with principals or teachers to come up with a way of bringing more trees into the space around the school. And that's been really a wonderful way to work. And even when we're working within neighborhoods, we really like to think about it not as us, you know, that we're really working in partnership with neighbors, and we're helping neighbors work in partnership with each other. Kind of some of the same things that Kristen was talking about, this idea of like, how can we work together on these things? So wanted to talk a little bit about some of the programs that are available specifically for trees. Part of what we do is to make sure that people know what resources are out there and have the tools, the skills, the information they need to follow through on those resources and get trees or shrubs around their home or neighborhoods, schools, parks, that sort of thing. So one thing that we do, it's a lot of fun. It's a little different this year, as sort of is probably a theme right now, but we have plant shares where usually we bring a whole bunch of plants, and people can stop by, pick up a couple trees or 3 even, and take them home and plant them. It's really nice because we get a chance to talk about what sorts of plants are available, where can one plant be planted versus another plant, and what is it going to look like 10 years from now. And really it becomes an educational opportunity for us to just share what we know or how to learn more. This year, what that's going to look like is a little bit more of a plant shares in small spaces, like small areas in connection with partner events. So I'll get into that a little bit. Oops, sorry, there's a little typo in there. So we're also going to be part of Green Tacoma Days, which is this time it's days, 4 days, the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, a whole bunch of different activities happening. Some of them are small group work parties. People can come out and plant trees or remove invasive plants or do a number of things like that. People can stop by at Wapato Lake Park and get some plants from us. Also participate in something called Goose Chase, where you sign up online and you can go through a series of challenges, and I think there's a little bit of an award at the end if you accomplish all of it. And you can learn more about that on greentacomaday.org. It's a partnership with not just Tacoma Tree Foundation, but the City of Tacoma, Earth Corps, Pierce Conservation District, Metro Parks, and a whole bunch of others. Also always like to share Grit City Trees, which the application is over, but the trees are about to come in, and people will start participating in the planting part of that. It's generally an annual program, though, and I'm hoping that it will happen again next year. The reason that I like to mention in particular is that part of it is a neighborhood-based application, where if neighbors get together and decide that they want to plant trees as part of the program as a community, then they get the plants delivered to them with mulch, and I really like to encourage that and to support that whenever we can. So if people are interested even now in getting more trees in their neighborhood, now's a great time to start talking to your neighbors, maybe from a distance. But if you know folks already, then you can ask them if they're interested in trees and get started for next year. And that program is specifically for the right-of-way, and they're free trees for the planting strip. You can check out more about that at the City of Tacoma's Grit City Trees website and learn all about this year's application, and when it's ready, they'll have next year's application there. Just wanted to also highlight some other tree programs. There's the Tree Coupon Program, which is just about to open now. That's between City of Tacoma and Tacoma Public Utilities. You can get $30 off of up to 3 trees at participating nurseries. So that's another thing that's great to get involved in. You can pick out whatever tree you want. It can be a smaller tree or a fruit tree. It can be a big shade tree or an evergreen. They're all great. Also, we work with TPU on the Hilltop Shade Tree Program, where we give free trees to people who want yard trees that will shade their home. So there's some specifics to that. You can reach out to me if you're interested in more information on that. And then Pierce Conservation District does an urban tree program every year, an urban tree sale, low cost trees, really nice quality. That usually comes up in June. You put in your order and they become available in October. So maybe one thing I'll just mention is that right now is kind of the very beginning of planting season where trees are concerned. Beginning of October, even like October 15th is like from then usually all the way till about the middle of March, end of March. And then we're kind of slowing down on tree planting. Once you get past March, you really need to water a lot more. So, so really we're just gearing up now. Also wanted to share Earth Day South Sound. Even though Earth Day is in April this year, we decided that as a group, as like basically any organization that wanted to get involved in a regional way, South Sound way, could be gathering to talk about how to get more trees in the ground, how to protect and preserve trees throughout the region. So that's something to stay connected with. We'll keep it going kind of all year long. It's sort of Earth Day all year long. Wanted to talk a little bit about some of the frequently asked questions that we get, more as a teaser that you could learn more. And this is where you would learn more. Well, some of the ways, there are lots of ways, but we offer an Intersections in Environmental Justice webinar. Happens once a month, where we kind of talk about how different factors, the way that trees and greening interact with a lot of other social issues, and just kind of try to help us think beyond the individual tree to relationships with each other and the way that policy impacts the physical environment that we live in. We also do a growing skills webinar where we focus on things that are kind of technical usually, though this month we'll be talking about, this month we'll be talking about how to plant trees on October 8th. So as we get ready for this planting season, we'll start off right, reminding ourselves how to do best practices around tree planting. So definitely encourage you to participate in that if you'd like. It's on our calendar. We also we're doing a plant care series. I'll say we're new to this web world, the world of, like so many people, we were really interested in having in-person programming, being really like place-based, and walking around neighborhoods with people. And so we're making this shift though to include more virtual work. So that's why we brought in these webinars and this plant care series that we're building up that will have how to take care of trees, how to water trees, how to plant trees, that sort of thing. And we have a tree steward training program, which has been kind of sidelined because of COVID, but I think that eventually what will happen is that our web series, or sort of YouTube series, will end up covering all the content in the tree stewards training. I think one positive to all of that is that if you can't be in person with us at the time that was organized, then you can still learn all the things that we're sharing and have access to other information. So there are always some pluses. This is what it looked like last year. We had professional trainings where we worked with arborists and landscape care folks to improve awareness of tree care practices, especially around pruning. We also did a tree stewardship training that involved a lot of work outside and some time inside, but we're moving into this webinar world. Oops, I'm not sure what happened there. So we have a YouTube channel. There aren't a lot of videos on there, but we're adding about one a week. So I encourage you to take a look at that if you're interested in learning more about the kind of technical side of tree. Actually, it's not just technical stuff. It's just the tree care world in a more holistic way. Also wanted to share a lot of people trying to kind of understand how they can plant trees. So I just sort of, it's a little bit throwing this out there, but we have some great resources, things like the DART map within Tacoma, where you can see some of the utilities that are around you. And when it comes to planting trees in your right of way or even in your front yard, it's very helpful to have a sense of what's happening underground. So you can take a look at the DART map and get to know your neighborhood in a different way than you can see in person. We also get a lot of questions about how do I figure out where my utilities are besides the DART map? Because the DART map doesn't include all of the utilities. So we always recommend, it's actually required in Washington State, if you plant a tree, you need to call 811 or contact the Utility Notification Center. It's free service. It's actually pretty easy to do it even online or over the phone. And somebody will come out and, or actually every utility that's affected will come out and paint the area to indicate where the utilities are. So it's useful for other things too besides trees, and I always like to share that resource is available and very useful. Moving into ways to get involved. When we're sort of like, right now, this has been a rough year. And so what I have found, and I think a lot of the folks on our team and that we work with, that when you don't know what to do, plant something, grow something. And this fall we'll be giving out a lot of plants for people to put in their yard or in containers, and really encourage you to do that, even, yeah, no matter what. Also volunteering, we're still doing volunteer programs as our Pierce Conservation District. Orcas loves rain gardens and chip in. They're a lot different now than they have been in the past. Now it's 3 or 4 people, 3 or 4 volunteers come out, or a family group can come out and do some specific work at a location. Some of them are rain gardens, like the Orcas Loves Rain Gardens. They focus mostly on rain gardens that are throughout Tacoma, taking care of them, planting them. Chip In does a lot of open space, natural area planting, and invasive plant removal. And Pierce Conservation does a number of different things. And we're mostly doing planting right now, or we will be. And actually we took on about, we had about 9,000 seedlings donated last April as part of Earth Day South Sound. And then we had purchased about 2,000 seedlings. So we potted up with volunteers and partners, we potted up about 11,000 plants, trees and shrubs. Some of them were planted directly in the ground, so we actually need help putting them in pots so that we can get them where they're going. So it's a great opportunity to volunteer in that way. It's lots of social distance, and also talking with your neighbors. I mentioned it before that if you feel that you would like more greening in your neighborhood, a great place to start is to talk to your neighbors, find out who else is interested. And then reach out to us, or you reach out to us if you'd like a little support in that. If you wanted to know if anybody else, if we'd heard anything in the neighborhood, we'd be happy to talk to you a little bit more about how to build that capacity within your own block or neighborhood. And I think that's pretty much it. I think I talked a little fast. Sorry about that. But I really like for I guess the last thing I like to say is to stay cool, Tacoma. Or it's a little better to say that in August when it was really hot, but it's still, you know, stay cool of the mind. And we'll figure this all out together. I hope you stay in touch, and happy to answer any questions.
Oh, let's see, I did see there was one question in the chat about the Grit City Tree Program, if you know how many neighbors are needed in order to qualify for that program.
Oh yeah, I should clarify that anybody can participate in Grit City Trees. You don't have to do it with neighbors, you can apply on your own. But if you apply as an individual, then you have to go pick up your tree and plant, yeah, it's basically you have to pick up your own tree. It's kind of nice when you start doing it with neighbors, because what happens is you get this momentum year after year. There's one neighborhood where I think they found out about the program. They planted like 20 trees the first year. This year they're hoping to plant like 55 trees. It just sort of spreads that way. So it's really nice when that momentum happens. But an individual can also apply on their own. And the deadline is usually around the end of August or beginning of September. And we're always happy to help people with the application too. Sometimes it just feels like a lot of things to figure out, you know, like which trees might work for me, or, you know, what happens if I talk to a neighbor and they don't like it, or, you know, we're just happy to talk people through the application and the what ifs and the what might work, or that sort of thing.
All right, we'll do a few more questions that came in through the chat. Do you need to check with 811 before you plant any type of tree, or are there other restrictions for homeowners planting tree on their own properties?
Well, if you're planting anything of a significant size where you're going to be digging deep in the ground, it's a good idea to call 811. It starts becoming increasingly more important as the hole gets bigger and as the equipment that you're using gets more powerful. But if you're using a shovel and you have a small plant, you don't have to worry about it so much. But if you're planting a large balled and burlap tree, then you're kind of getting into, or even the ones that they offer for grit city trees, I think are number 15 gallon trees. So they're not huge, but they're big enough to kind of trigger the 811 call.
Okay, it looks like there's another question about the Grit City. Do you know if it's only once a year, or is it a one-time only?
It is a once a year program. They open up applications around June.
And are there any similar programs outside of the city of Tacoma?
Yeah, outside of the city of Tacoma, the organization or city of Tacoma municipal boundaries. I'll say both. We provide trees also. So we work more, I didn't really say this in the presentation, but we focus more on South Tacoma, South End, and East Side. And our programs are, well, the way that we give out trees when it comes to these larger trees is a little bit more kind of filling in the gaps. So if once Grit City Tree is done, sometimes there are some individuals who get really excited after that point, and their neighbors have just done it, and they're in South Tacoma, South End, or East Side, and then we can come in with a few trees. So we will have a few trees this year too, and over the next year and a half, we'll be doing a lot of work in South Tacoma and South End. So if anyone lives in those neighborhoods, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll see what we can do. And then there's also the urban tree sale that I mentioned. Pierce Conservation District has that low cost tree. They're great plants.
It looks like the last question on here was very similar, if they're on the Key Peninsula as well.
Oh, right. Okay, so outside of the city of Tacoma, we're not sort of bounded by the city of Tacoma, so we work in unincorporated Pierce County, and part of what we were doing with the Earth Day South Sound was to get more trees in the ground around the region. So if people are interested in smaller plant material, we have lots of trees available, and so sometimes we find people in areas outside of Tacoma that maybe have properties where they can take on things like Douglas fir, Western white pine, or Sitka spruce. Those are all things that we could be very happy to share. They're not very big at this point, but they're doing great, and they need homes.
Okay, and it looks like they're asking for clarification on the Grit City question. If you participated in it 1 year, are you eligible to do it again another year?
Well, I suppose if you have space in your right of way for another tree, then you should be able to qualify for the tree. Yeah, they prioritize neighborhood plantings over other things, but if you have a spot in your right of way that could use a tree, then it's worth putting the application in.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I believe that was all the questions in the chat. Someone correct me if I missed any of them.
Well, I'll mention that we'll be at Hilltop Urban Gardens on Saturday from 12 to 2, sharing some plants. And we'll be at Blix Elementary on October 17th, also sharing some plants. I think that's about 9 to noon. And Wapato Lake Park on Saturday the 10th from 11 to 1, 10 to 1. All this information is on our website too.
All right, and I guess the last question is, are we going to be able to send out copies of these slides? I know we were working on that, I believe. Okay, well, thank you very much, Sarah. That was very informational. A lot of good stuff there.
Thank you for having us, or having me, and on behalf of Tacoma Tree Foundation.
All right, and then our last presentation for the night is going to be on little libraries. Okay. Roxanne, you wanted to go ahead and introduce? Or did
Sure, I will do a really quick introduction. It is Dan Wiswell from Little Libraries in Arrowhead Estates. He is a lifelong Tacoma resident, and he is the library steward for Arrowhead Estates, and he has been the steward since 2018. Dan, please unmute yourself.
Is Dan with us?
He is. We had some difficulties, and so I had to send him the link. We got that, yes, Louis, we got that taken care of. So I think he's just getting unmuted. I will check again.
Can you guys hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Sorry about that. Apologize. I've been retired for 10 years, and this computer stuff and Zoom meetings, this is my first Zoom meeting. So I appreciate you guys' patience. I'm sorry, but I didn't have all the technical difficulties worked out today. So what I'd like to do, if you guys can hear me okay, is I'd like to go through the history of the Little Free Library program, talk about my library and the origin of my library, the pros and cons of being a library steward, and then I'm going to go into some higher level stewarding things like book bombing and some of the things that you can do that are adjacent activities to being a steward, kind of go over some sources for books, and then resources, and then open it up for questions and answers, if that's okay. So the history of the Little Free Library organization. The first library was built by Todd Boyle in 2009 in memorial for his mother, who was a teacher and a lifelong reader, and it's located in Hudson, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, Mr. Boyle, the founder of the organization, he passed away in October of 18 of pancreatic cancer, but the library organization has carried on his vision and has continued to grow exponentially over the last few years. The actual library organization was founded in 2012. It's headquartered in Hudson, Wisconsin also. There are currently over 110,000 registered libraries, but that doesn't include the unregistered libraries, because there are many unregistered libraries, and it's really hard to tell how many. But my wife and I, when we go out, we visit other libraries, we encounter probably about another 10 to 20%, but they're not on any maps. The Little Free Library Organization is a nonprofit organization that gives to underprivileged communities through their Impact Library program. They've given away over 1,000 libraries over the years. The Todd Bowles quote that he has is, and his vision for the organization was, "I really believe in a little free library on every block and a book in every hand. I believe we can fix their neighborhoods, fix their communities, develop systems of sharing, learn from each other, and see that they have a better place on this planet to live." And kind of the vision of the program is to build community, spark creativity, and inspire reading. And hopefully through this presentation, I'll show you how we've accomplished that at our library and through our activities. So why I built my library. In 2016, I had to move over to my father's house to care for him 24/7 when he lost his second leg to diabetes. My dad and I didn't necessarily, we loved each other, but we didn't necessarily get along, and it was very hard on me, it was really hard on him, and it was really hard on my wife. One of the things I did for my mental health during that time is I read more than probably any other time in my life, as I was living in his motorhome. And I walked the neighborhoods that I grew up in over in University Place, Washington. And during those walks, I encountered my first couple of little free libraries. And this was in summer of 2016. So I purchased a charter number then, and I had intentions of building my library in September of 16, but unfortunately my dad passed that month, and it took a year for me to get through his estate in order to finally be able to be in a position to build my library, and it wasn't installed until May of 18. Just to give you perspective, the charter's numbers go in order. In July of 16, my charter number is 43,296. And like I said, now they're issuing library numbers in the 110,000. So in 4 years, they've more than doubled and are getting close to tripling the number of libraries that are actually chartered. So the movement is building momentum. My library was a neighborhood effort. Two of my closest friends that used to live in the neighborhood helped fabricate my library. I have a steel subframe for it, which is way overkill. Then another friend helped me do the cladding with the plywood to build it. So I have a dedication plaque to those two families that helped me build my library. And the other thing that's a little bit different about my wife, Trina, and I is that we truly built our library for the library itself, and the books are secondary. And that's an anomaly through the organization. Most people are avid readers. A lot of people are librarians and teachers, and it is book driven. And my library is a little bit of an overkill when it comes to that. So I like talking about some of the pros and cons of a library. Like I said, one of the biggest things is it builds community and neighborhoods. I can definitely say that in my community, it takes a little bit of time to be able to build a regular user base, but we have, and our library is used more than a couple of times a day at this point. And one of the great things about the library during this time frame is that most of the public libraries were closed, and also the school libraries were closed. So we carry about 3,000 books on a normal basis based on our activities. And we opened it up to the Arrowhead Facebook page that we had books, and we took requests. And we took from March until probably this month, we took countless requests for books, and we're able to fulfill those requests during this time. So it's been a great community builder, and it's been really rewarding for us too. The other thing that it does promote literacy. There are kids that come back on a regular basis, and you can see them excited about books. I mean, it's great, wonderful to see. And then the last thing, as far as the cons, having too many books is more often an issue for library stewards than not having enough. You'll get donations from friends, family, your community. Sometimes it's because people just don't know how to get rid of books. And part of being a librarian or a steward is curating and culling books if necessary. But you have to be, if you build a library and put one in, you have to be aware that You might have to have some room for a little bit of backstop. So that's kind of the history, how I built my library, and some pros and cons. Do you guys have any questions so far? Also, is there any other stewards on this line, on this call today? Hello?
It does not look like we've had any questions come in through the chat yet.
Okay, cool. So some higher level things as far as what Trina and I do. Like I said, it took 1.5 years for me to build my library, and during that time, we continued to buy books because we wanted to have a deep and diverse selections of books. And at the time we opened our library, we had about 600 books. And it became very evident quickly that we didn't have enough foot traffic to warrant the amount of books we had. So one of the things we read about is an activity called book bombing. And what book bombing is visiting other libraries. And typically stewards, if they do that, they straighten the shelves. We try to add to what the stewards are already doing. Typically we leave libraries about 85 to 90% full. And then we leave 2 custom Little Free Library Organization bookmarks. That's kind of our calling card when we book bomb. Just for example, in East Tacoma, there are 30 grant libraries that were put in October of 18, and we've been over there about every 90 days to book bomb those 30 libraries. And in those 30 libraries, we've donated greater than 35 boxes of books in our community. Since we started this in August of 18, we've visited 1,266 libraries. We've donated over 8,000 books, with 75% of those being toddler to teen. That's the greatest need in the libraries, is children's books, because typically they don't get returned, they get damaged. It's just harder to keep children's books on hands for most stewards. And they also don't get donated that much either too. So some of the places that we've seen, we've book bombed libraries from Oahu, Hawaii to Orlando, Florida. We've book bombed libraries from Las Vegas to Nevada to Vancouver Island, BC. And then we've done everything from central Portland through central Seattle, and then going on the east side of the lake, everything on I-90 from Seattle to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, including 150 libraries in the greater Spokane area. And then if you go out on the Olympic Peninsula, we've done everything from Gig Harbor through Port Angeles. Then we took the 101 the long way around, all the way down to Newport, Oregon, and did every library down that way too. The places we've been, the libraries and the surroundings that we've been to in this state, and the people we've met, wouldn't happen without book bombing. And you know, the books are just a vehicle for us. It's for us it's to go see the libraries and enjoy the libraries and enjoy the surroundings and the things that are in those communities. So libraries themselves, if you're building a library, some of the things, they come in all shapes and sizes. Seriously, I mean, all shapes and sizes. There's store-bought libraries. There's libraries that can be bought from the Little Free Library Organization, through Etsy. In Spokane, they have a company called Little Library Builders of Spokane, and they model the house. They'll build a exact replica of the house, and they do wonderful work over there. And then there's custom-built libraries like mine. If you're building a custom-built library, the one piece of advice is build them bigger than you think. Children's books, specifically board books, get quite large. So plan the interior of your library and make sure that you're able to hold all sizes of books. And the last thing about libraries themselves is that anything and everything that you could repurpose, we have seen out there. So upcycling and repurposing and using things to minimize the cost is somewhat of a core of the Little Free Library Organization. It's certainly something they strive for too. So some of the other adjacent activities that happen in libraries, People have geocaches in their libraries. They have letterboxing in their libraries. Some people are able to get their libraries to become Pokemon stops. Libraries have leash hooks for dogs and treats for dogs. I've seen seed exchanges in libraries. People have benches. They have kindness rock gardens. They have fairy gardens, and they also people do pantries, little free pantries too, along with their libraries. And then other things that like as far as going back one step to the libraries, a lot of people do a library first, and then they'll add a kids annex, so a second library for their kids' books, so they have more room. So like is one thing I said about that can be a con is not having enough books. Some of the sources for books that are out there that we've used. In our first year of book bombing, we purchased 90% of the books that we donated in last year. Based upon our reputation, we were able to have almost all of our books donated. We have some sources up in Seattle that really help us out, and our friends and family have helped, and people seek us out because they know what we do with books. But the sources locally that we've used when we've had to purchase books is thrift stores like Goodwill. And then the best one locally in Washington is the Half Price Books outlet down in Black Lake, Olympia. Other resources, I do have a Pinterest page if you search book bombing that has all 1,266 libraries that we visited, so you can see what libraries look like and get some ideas for designs. Obviously the Little Free Library Organization website. And then once you become a steward, the Little Free Library official stewards page on Facebook is a wonderful source to be able to get questions answered. Any questions?
We did have a couple of questions in the chat. First, we've got, in your experience, are many stewards so involved, or do you and your wife in particular put a lot of love into the little libraries?
We're an anomaly. There's one steward that I know of in Rhode Island that has book bombed 200 libraries in the last 4 years. There's a steward in Paulsbo, Karen Becker, who was inspired by us, and she's book bombed about 150 libraries over the last 2 years. And then there's nobody else like us. We are an anomaly for sure. I would say this isn't any different than anything I've ever done, though. I'm 2 standard deviations from any me.
And let's see, the other question in here is, how much money typically does it cost to build the library?
So if you're going to buy a store-bought library from the Little Free Library page, they have libraries as low as $250. Most libraries that you see that are on either Etsy or through them, or even the ones I looked on the Spokane Builder site, they're on the low end. They're anywhere are right around $250 to $300. But then you also have to add in shipping, and I'm not sure what the costs are there. My library, again, I overdid it, and it has a steel subframe. I use the best materials. I use exotic woods. It weighs 150 pounds without books. It has a steel post. I had probably about $600 just in materials building my library, but it's an exception and certainly not the rule, and definitely not what the Little Free Library Organization strives for. Just about putting a box out in front and being able to have it for people to use.
And we also had a question if you have any pictures that you could share with us.
I do. Again, I'm not online. I sent some to Roxanne. I sent a picture of my library, and then the most famous library there is at this point, as far as I'm aware, is if you look online at the Little Free Tree Library in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. My wife and I visited that for the 1,000th library that we book bombed, and it's worth a visit. It's absolutely amazing. It's built in a 110-year-old tree that was cut down, and that would be there. But all 1,266 libraries that we have are on my Pinterest page, and most of those are from Washington State. And every We visited 140 different zip codes in Washington across every demographic, across every socioeconomic situation you can see. We've seen a great portion of Western Washington and through all communities. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of pictures, and Pinterest is a really good source. You can find a lot of stuff on there.
It looks like all the questions we have at the moment. I am working on pulling up a picture of the tree library you mentioned, so everyone can take a look.
And I was going to say, since I know where the little library is in Arrowhead Estates, I can drive over there and take a picture.
Well, Roxanne, I sent you one on Facebook on Messenger of my library.
Okay.
It's right there, and also the Little Free Tree Library is there also. Again, I apologize for not being computer savvy.
That is not a problem. We have the picture up of the tree library there for just a minute. Everybody's enjoying that.
That house was for sale about 2 months ago, or a month and a half ago.
Does anyone have any other questions?
I don't know if I do a share screen, if it'll allow me to show that picture. Do you want me to try?
Sure.
You disabled me sharing the screen.
Oh, let me fix that right now. All right, you should be able to share now.
So can everybody see that picture?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
So on my library, everything's based on the little fairy door that's down on the little planter to the left of the library. So all of the angles were pulled off of the fairy door. The molding shape is based on the fairy door, and the color scheme is based on the fairy door that I designed back in 2012. So the goal of the library was for it to be as if the fairy door came to life.
I want one.
And it's exception, not the rule. It's way, way, way overdone relative to everything out there, or most things out there. It's way overdone.
So what types of wood do you have there?
In that, so if I sent you another, if I can find another one here real quick, I'll send you a picture of the interior of my library too. So in mine, I try to use the best materials possible for Western Washington. And my door is actually, it was built like a traditional wood window would be built. And I used white oak for that. I found a source for dark walnut. So my door jamb is made out of dark walnut. The moldings on my library are out of cedar. And then I used a technique where you use steel wool, vinegar, and tea bags to darken the wood and age the wood or oxidize the wood for the color. In the interior of my library, let's see if I can get a good picture. I have a hardwood accent wall and flooring in it. And then I built a little magazine rack And then my geocache is inside, and there's more dark, my shelf is dark walnut, and the geocache is dark walnut too. So let's see if we can find a picture here real quick. Sorry about that.
Okay, now I have ideas, so thank you.
Everyone wanted me to let you know that you're getting lots of love in the chat. They love how cute it is.
There's a picture.
And we're back.
There we go. But again, mine is way, way, way overdone. It's most libraries don't go to the extent on the interior of that I did. They're just generally painted and caulked, and that's about it. And like I said, I put in hardwoods and things of that nature.
Well, I love the woods. I like building things with wood too. That's why when I saw all the different woods, I thought, what did you use?
Yeah, and then the other thing, my siding and stuff, and also in the interior, I just used cedar siding, cedar snap lock siding for all of that. Which that's typically not done either. Generally, it's just painted.
I'm going to stop talking so other people can ask questions.
There was one more request for just a quick explanation of what a geocache is.
Sure. So a geocache, and I didn't know what they were when I built my library, and actually I asked for community input at an Arrowhead meeting, and one of the families had suggested it, so I did a research, and they helped me design and build my geocache. But a geocache is an orienteering game where you get coordinates and clues to be able to find a hide, and a hide could be in anything from an ammo box to an Altoids can to even hidden ones that look like a bolt. And in the hide, basically the only requirement is a log book or piece of paper where you can write down that you were there. In mine, let's see if I can find another picture for Roxanne here real quick. My hide is actually not in the library proper. It's on the side of my library in a little door. And if you're gonna put a geocache, I recommend that. One piece of advice that you'll hear is from library stewards is don't put anything in your library that you don't want to walk away, because they will. Guest book will walk away, geocaches will walk away, dog treats will walk away, decorations will walk away. It's unfortunate, it's just the way it is. When I talk about vandalism, one of the things that's really tough around, especially in the tougher communities, is people that book sell, and they'll come in and clean out a library. So people stamp books, they'll cross out ISBN numbers, they'll black out barcodes in order to try to reduce that activity. But it happens. So going back to geocaching, my geocache is in a little side door. And my cache, or my hide, is in a hard copy, hollowed out hard copy of Ender's Game. And my geocache name is Wiggins Challenge. And I always put a red herring, which is something to throw off geocachers, of a copy of Ender's Game in my library at all times. But it's a great activity. It's salt of the earth type people. I bet the average age is plus 50 of geocachers, and they're just really, really great people. And it was a great way to create foot traffic early to my library. Initially, I was probably 10-to-1 geocacher to library user. Now it's more like 20-to-1 library user to geocacher. But it's just great. It's fun, and being in Western Washington, the headquarters for geocache is in Seattle. The original stash was down in Portland, and there are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of geocaches around here, and it's a wonderful activity.
It looks like we did have another question in the chat. Are little libraries ever inside?
Yes, they are, especially in businesses. You'll find them in businesses to get a little bit of advertisement and stuff. Probably the one that was most memorable to me was a coffee shop just outside of Lincoln City that had a wonderful library inside. But yeah, you'll find geocaches inside. You'll find geocaches on front porches too that you wouldn't suspect. And it's a little, as somebody that goes and visits libraries, it's a little weird to walk up on somebody's front porch to go through stuff. But yes, anywhere. Parks, a lot of libraries in parks, a lot of libraries around schools, churches, definitely.
All right, well, thank you very much, Dan. That was a great presentation. I think everybody learned a whole lot about little libraries and caused some inspiration in people here. So we appreciate you coming.
Cool. In conclusion, I'll leave you guys with a few things. If you do put a library up, first thing is the best advice you can have is patience. People get upset and are disappointed that they don't get foot traffic. It takes some time. And the best thing that we ever did was we did a book exchange for Halloween. And historically, we had about 12 trick-or-treaters annually. And our first book exchange 2 years ago was 40 plus people. We gave away hot chocolate and candy and books, and comic books went over really, really well. And the next year we did the same thing last year, and a lot of the kids came back going, oh, this is the book house. So as far as education went, that was one of the best things. The second thing is, especially if you're on the stewards page, your library, your rules. Some people censor the books, some people don't censor the books. Some people are helicopter parents like Trina and I. Some people just let it up there and stay. Your library, your rules. There are no official rules from the Little Free Library Organization. You do what you want to do for it to provide joy for you and your family and your community. And then 3, you get what you put in, you get out of it what you put into it, at least for Trina and I, for sure. And then lastly, the impact on us. We've spent a lot of quality time together trying to do good for our community. The libraries we've seen, the places we've been, the surroundings around the libraries seen more of the state in the last 2 years than I did in the first 48 years of my life. And we've met many, many, many stewards, and many of those have become friends. So they're really good people, and it's a great community to be a part of. And hopefully we're doing good for us, for at least not only Tacoma, but Pierce County, and then another 139 libraries or zip codes around the state.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I think that pretty much wraps us up. Let me just share one more second here. Go ahead, and we would love to have you all join us in 2 weeks for our next session, the How to Engage New and Existing Group Members. You can sign up in the same place you did, or it is the same Zoom link. You can come right back and visit us again. And we will have, at the end of the conference, so at the end of the month, you'll be getting a follow-up email from us that will have a link for a survey. So you can kind of give us some feedback on the format as a whole and on our different presenters and our topics. And we would love if you could fill that out for us. We do have rewards for those people that do. We do have a drawing for some rewards. So if no one else has any further questions, we are done for this evening.
Thank you for the time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Dan.
No worries.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Chuck, for joining. April, good to see you here.